You're listening to the Family Discipleship Podcast, a podcast of training the church. This is Adam Griffin, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Mrs. Cassie Bryant, and my wife, Mrs. Chelsea Griffin. Cassie, when I say Eric, your husband, is a very supportive husband, what comes to mind for you? What do you think about when I say that?
I think about how during the pandemic, he would give me what he called mental health Mondays. And he would...
Is that Cassie time? What is that?
Well, it was so much more than Cassie time. So his parents had a house on the river in Granbury during that season, which was so providential. And he would take the girls on Sunday afternoons and he would stay the night out there and come back Monday night. So he would give me like 30 hours of a kid-free house just because I needed it for my sanity.
Wow.
I know. So he does stuff like that all the time. He's just such a yes guy. Like anytime I ask to do something or I'm like, hey, there's this trip, or hey, like some girlfriends and I want to go to New York for Christmas for a friend's 40th. And his yes is just always on the table. And I just really appreciate
cool.
That's very supportive because he knows I need spontaneity and adventure to flourish and thrive. So that's so supportive of him.
Is that something when that time that you got away from him and the kids in order to kind of be at peace? Was that something you asked for, or did he come up with that? Say, hey, why don't I do this?
He came up with it. He was realizing that being home all together all the time was kind of wearing on me. He's just so attentive. We talked about this in the listening episode. He's just kind of very aware. And so when he thought about like what could serve me well, he was like, hey, I think sometime every mom loves a day alone in the house, right? No?
Yeah.
I love it. Being home alone.
When I have a day alone, I do love it, but I get out of the house. But a lot of times it's because like I don't really prioritize cleaning our house. So a lot of times our house. Well, no, it just means it's not the most peaceful place to hang out.
Gotcha.
So I'd rather go to the sauna, followed by the driving range.
Yes.
Followed by a place that serves either delicious coffee or soda.
Ooh, you remember when Eric planned that whole day away for me, and he had you book a meeting for me? This is when you were my boss.
Yes.
He had you book an all-day meeting, and I was so nervous. I was like, what does Adam want to meet with me about?
Oh, you're getting fired.
Yeah, but all day? Like, that's a 15-minute conversation. Yeah. And he had scheduled, like, a whole day alone throughout the city. So he bought me movie tickets. He, like, booked a reservation at a restaurant. And there was, like, a gift card for it. It was so sweet. But stuff like that.
That's awesome.
He does, he's really good at all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I love it. We should talk about, maybe we'll do an episode on like surprise and serve. I think those are such good. Let's do that. We'll do an episode this season on surprise and serve. And I think that'll be awesome.
That's fun.
What was I going to, I don't remember what I was about to say, but yeah, what about us? Chelsea, when you think about a supportive spouse, what comes to mind for you?
You're sweet to me.
Oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to fish for compliments at the beginning of this episode. So.
Yeah. You're very sweet to me. I think that I know a lot of wives that don't get the kind of verbal affirmation that I do in my marriage, and I'm really grateful for it. And I think you've set an example for me that I can reciprocate because I know how great it feels to be seen and just acknowledged. We don't have to have it, but it's a sweet thing in our marriage to be able to just recognize one another for the good work that we do. Or I don't know, even if I like have a great day alone and I'm like, today was so great, I worked out, and then I hit golf balls. You're like, I'm so happy for you.
I am happy for you. Yeah. We just talked about yesterday how, Chelsea time, was the word you used based on a conversation about somebody else who always like, I'm not getting enough me time, but I do think what Cassie's bringing up, where maybe early in our marriage, if you were to say something like, hey, I could use some time to myself, it might seem insulting, right? Mm-hmm. It might have seemed like, why do you want me to go away?
Yeah, why do you want space from me? But the truth is,
the more mature we get, the more you realize like, no, it'd be good. No, I'm not saying about I need time away. There's just things I'd like to do that I haven't gotten to do lately. Mm-hmm. And Chelsea, if you got Chelsea time, is it just sauna, driving range? Like, what's Chelsea time look like?
Oh, I love to read at a coffee shop, to feel like you could be somewhere and you're not like in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what feels really special, is getting to do something enjoyable without feeling like, okay, hurry up though, because you have to be somewhere like really soon and you can't be late and it's important. Like that kind of little cloud hanging over you while you do something that you otherwise enjoy is not fun to me. So like to be at the gym and feel like, oh, like I can, just kind of like linger, or whatever.
Yeah.
That feels great.
You've been such a blessing to me in that because you know the way my mind works. Even if we're doing something fun, I'm already thinking about how little time we have left to do it. We'll be on vacation and be like, oh, we only have 2 days left is what always crosses my mind. Or I'm already thinking about when we're on sabbatical and the kids are in school. I'm like, yeah, but by the time I drop them off, it'll be almost time to pick them up. I don't know what that'll feel like.
Are you a deficit thinker? You're like a deficit.
I definitely have a learning deficit. Thanks for bringing that up, Cassie.
Like a half glass empty, kind of like always thinking about like
pessimist?
Maybe that's the word for it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that I'm a pessimist in most things, but I do.
When it comes to time.
It doesn't feel like I have the day unless I have nothing on the day. So if there's a countdown, it feels like I'm too busy.
Yeah.
Chelsea, what were you going to say? Is that not accurate?
I was just going to say that I would say he's too optimistic generally. And I'm here to crush dreams because every marriage has a dream crusher, and it's me.
That's funny.
No, Adam's super optimistic, but he is always thinking about time.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm that way. In our relationship, our family, I'm always thinking about like what has to happen next, which it makes me, I have a hard time relaxing, know?
Same.
And so, yeah, I'm very similar.
Chelsea
Eric's
would say,
better.
I don't know how to chill. And she's right. But I asked ChatGPT this week, Cassie, what is a good hobby for a 45-year-old pastor who likes to read books? And it said, you should go bird watching. And I was like, oh, you know what? I will go bird watching.
He loves birds.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Bird watching is very cool. I think it's kind of
relaxing.
A sleeper hobby. I don't know that a lot of people do it. I went to Laity Lodge for one of my retreats on sabbatical a couple of years ago, and they had a bird watcher there that in the morning he would take you bird watching. He had the binoculars.
And kidnap you?
It was so fun. No, there was a group of us. It was a group activity. But
that's great.
I enjoyed it a lot more. As an extrovert, I thought I would shrivel up and die, but it was a lot more fun than I thought.
No, I'm planning on it. I mentioned it yesterday to our staff. One of our staff members said, hey, there's some bald eagles down by White Rock Lake in Dallas. And I was like, yeah, I've seen them. And he goes, yeah, but have you watched them? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm watching. You don't just have to see them.
Watched?
I have to go watch.
You got to go watch them.
Observe.
I told Adam, I was like, there's webcams that let you watch a bald eagle all day long.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that would do for a person, but if it serves you, then I want you to have it.
But bald eagles, they support each other as, mates and spouses. And the building of the nest, the watching of the children, very supportive bald eagle marriages. Speaking of supportive marriages.
Are you making that up?
No, they stay together. It's true.
I've never heard that.
No. Okay.
And I've never seen a bald eagle with another bald eagle.
Oh, what? They pair up and then they have their own territory.
I feel like you're thinking of whooping cranes.
Or penguins. Don't penguins mate for
Cardinals life? Are the same way. Cardinals mate for life. It's a thing. Penguins mate for life.
I'm just trying to set you up, show people how much you know about birds.
Uh-oh. This was one of those nerd quizzes. Like, I don't. That's true. I'm like, no, it really is.
ChatGPT really had you pegged.
Yeah, that's it. How does it know me?
You're like a Christian wildcat, brother.
Yeah. Some pastors we know, they'd put that in and they'd be like, 2 baths a day is a good hobby, So it's like, you never know.
Oh, Kyle Worley. What's that?
I wasn't going to say his name.
Sorry. Kyle just put it out there. It's on his newsletter. Everybody can know.
There you go. It's public
2 baths a day is 2 baths too many to me.
That's a hobby.
Bath, unless you have rosemary and candles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So hobby.
Anyway, well, this season we are talking about marriage. We're already talking about being supportive. I love that Eric is supportive. I love that our marriage is supportive. We are going to talk today about, some struggles in that area too. It's not all rose petals and bath bombs. Sometimes there's the struggle in there as well. So I want to talk about being supportive when things aren't going well. So this is kind of the narrative I hear. While Eric is a supportive husband, Chelsea's being very kind and saying I'm a supportive husband. But the typical narrative is that men, particularly men, I should say, but not only men, have a hard time asking for help and have a hard time maybe even offering help. Cassie, why do you think people, maybe particularly men, have such a hard time asking for help? Saying, hey, could you consider how this might bless me, or could you do this for me, or could you do this with me?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would say, because in our marriage, it's probably more me than it is Eric that would have a hard time with that. And I think it's the value I place, and maybe our culture places, on autonomy and independence. And so and even strength. So the idea of showing any form of weakness, especially in a marriage where there's already so much vulnerability, to ask for help can feel hard. Like even within our marriages, we're trying to bow up and prove to each other that, like our previous episodes, that our strengths compared to their weaknesses, or, vice versa. It's this constant kind of competitive in our flesh. That's kind of how we're operating, rather than, no, we've been given each other to help throughout our day. And so it's okay to ask for that help. And so it feels vulnerable to ask a partner or ask your spouse and or even your community for prayer or to show your weaknesses. But we weren't created or made to do any of this alone. So whether you're single or married, we were made for community. We're made for one another and to do this together. And so I think the enemy for sure and culture and our flesh all wants us to try and isolate and do things on our own, which makes it really hard to ask for help. And then on the flip side of that, it makes it hard to give help because we feel entitled and we might resent helping someone, especially if their struggle is consistent to long suffer or to bear with someone for a long time can feel wearisome. And I don't know, I can imagine that it just feels hard to offer help. Or if you don't think their struggle is valid, then you feel frustrated by that. And I'm probably getting into other questions you have at this point, but
no, that's good.
That's how I'd sum it up.
I would even say, I'd say boldly, I think not asking for help in a marriage is anti-biblical.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think that is anti-biblical to say, like, we don't really ask each other for help. Chelsea, tell me why.
I think there's a big fear of disappointment that if you make your needs known or let somebody really in to what's hard, like I said, people might not see your struggle as valid. Like a spouse who's struggling with depression that says like, I just feel this kind of cloud over me that like nothing really breaks through to feel joy or to feel purpose. And someone who's never struggled with depression would say like, they just don't know how to relate to that. They would say, just be happy, just kind of get over it kind of thing. But I think a lot of Christians have had this experience before where you share something in a community group, small group setting somewhere, and you really give people the opportunity to help you or serve you. You share something that was hard for you to share. You bear your soul, and then no one responds.
Yeah.
No one does anything. No one follows up. No one even says like, oh, okay, I can relate to that. I know how that feels. Yeah, crickets, no follow-up. I think that is, not that it's the experience all the time, but I bet almost every believer has had it at some point, whether we shared it with a person who just really didn't care about us that much and we thought maybe they cared more. But I think there's an ongoing fear of disappointment, especially in close relationships, because it would hurt me more if it came from Adam.
Yeah.
Where if I shared something difficult and he didn't really pay attention or didn't really care, that hurts more than if I kind of shared it blindly with like, coworkers or something and like no one really followed up. It'd be like, oh, that's okay. Like, But yeah, I think there's a major fear of being hurt and a fear of being disappointed. So it's easier to say like, I'm fine. Yeah. What do you think, Adam? You said men are the
men
real...
are the worst.
Yeah, I heard you say men are the worst. So defend yourselves.
I think, a word that Cassie used earlier is that we think of asking for help as a weakness. And while weakness is a reality and not a negative thing, like we treat it like it's negative. So to say I can't do this by myself feels like I'm saying something's wrong with me. But weakness is actually admitting something's right with me. I can't do this by myself. Remember in Genesis, when God sees the man by himself, he says, that's not good. He doesn't say, oh, this man is broken. Remember, is sin entered the world yet? No, sin hasn't entered the world yet. And he goes, it'd be good for this man not to be by himself. So he creates for him a what?
A helper.
A helper. This is why I think it's unbiblical to say don't ask for help. Like, why are we married to one another? This is one of the kind of central blessings of marriage is that we help one another. So to not communicate where I could use help is to undermine one of the very purposes the Lord gave you a spouse. So the fact that men may not ask for help because they look at that as a way of saying something's wrong with me, that's what's wrong. I think what would be right is to say, how do I find a better way to communicate? This is what would be really helpful. You know what would be really helpful for me? Like however your marriage finds to communicate that to one another. I'd love to talk about that for a second, but I think to not communicate either gratitude for help, hey, that was really helpful, or communicate where it would be helpful. You know what would help me today, and would you be willing to do this, is to undermine the other person in the marriage's ability to be who God called them to be, your helper. Cassie, when you are feeling like you're struggling with something, how do you communicate to Eric that you could use some support? Like, what does that look like? What's a healthy version maybe of that? I'm not asking for like where it goes wrong.
On a good day, I'm more in tune to the spirit and to what's going on. And I feel like I'm really quick to ask Eric for prayer before things tend to boil over. So I think on a good day, I will shoot him a text to let him know, like, today's hard. I'm really struggling. If you could pray. And usually if there's something specific going on, whether it's work or something with the girls, he'll kind of already know, but maybe I haven't looped him in because we haven't connected. We've been busy. And so I'll have to like loop him in on that. And so on a good day, I think I reach out, I ask for prayer. And then if there's actual like tangible things he can do for me, then I'll kind of ask if he's available to do this. Like, hey, can you take dinner prep today? Do you mind if I go for a walk and get some space to clear my head, to pray, to worship, whatever. And so those are on good days. On bad days, you didn't ask about this, but on bad days, like I'm not in tune with what's going on and it just bubbles over and it spills over, usually like into anger, irritation, frustration. And he's pretty quick to pick up on like, hey, like, what's going on? Do you need something? You know, and some of that's because I resent my own weakness, right? Like what even you were saying, I don't want to admit that I need help. I want to think I can do it on my own and I don't have to, or he doesn't see it's a busy day for him and I don't think he's available to help, but I haven't even asked. So I've already written him off as someone who could help me with my struggle, which isn't fair to him because it doesn't even give him the opportunity to partner with me in whatever that is happening in the day. So
thanks for being vulnerable about that, Cassie. I do think for all of us, we have like a good version of this. Yeah. Where this is how it has gone well, either in the way we communicated or the way it was received. Mm-hmm. And there can also be like, hey, this is how it's gone poorly, right? Where we've asked for something, felt like we gave it the most gracious ask we could, and it wasn't received well. Or where we didn't ask well. And so we didn't, like we had maybe an unmet expectation because it was an uncommunicated expectation. Mm-hmm. I just thought you would be more helpful. I just thought you would be more supportive. I thought you would notice, or passive aggressively, we try to let a spouse know what's going on. And so we don't actually communicate those things.
I think Paul Tripp says that expectations are premeditated resentments.
Ouch.
I know, because it's like, especially unspoken ones, right? So you're basically already setting yourself up to resent your spouse or somebody. It doesn't always have to be your spouse. It can be your kids. It can be your coworkers. But if you expect something of somebody, and especially if you don't communicate it and you're just kind of moving about your day, you're setting yourself up to resent them. And that relationship will operate like at a deficit because you have these unmet expectations that you're constantly moving through and around. So that's really stuck with me. I don't know if it's in the What Did You Expect book that he wrote or if it was in a talk that we heard, but I think about that often when I'm like, wow, I didn't even say that out loud. And now I'm holding it against him. You know, I didn't even give him the chance.
Sure.
Yeah. And sometimes even like a spouse might set a trap for the other one to say like, I kind of communicated this or I didn't communicate that just to see how you respond and you didn't do well. As if like we put ourselves in the position of the professor and then taking an exam and you failed, you know? And that is the way we build resentments in marriages that don't go well. And I see it all the time. Yeah. Like I did this hoping he would do that and he didn't. And look, and that's evidence it's like, so did you try just communicating? Hey, this is what I'd like.
Just cryptic.
Or did you set a trap knowing that he would fail it because you know your husband? And so you're preemptively trying to catch him in something. That's hard. Chelsea, I appreciate this conversation we're having with Cassie right now about sharing with our spouse. This is when I need help. But the truth is also there's an aspect of this, maybe an other side of the coin, where checking in, asking a spouse how they're doing would help us be more supportive. What would like a healthy routine of checking in on your spouse look like? What's a healthy way you think of seeing if your spouse needs help?
Obviously different for different couples, but a couple things that are common for us is, after work to kind of process the work day. And sometimes it can be easy to kind of rattle off events, but it could be more helpful to say like, well, how did that feel when that happened? And then generally so those are some kind of everyday things to process events and see how your spouse coped with those things and encourage them, but then more regular or less often than like every single day, but just, to pop in and say, what's God teaching you or what's giving you life lately? Is there anything that feels like it's sucking the life out of you? I think just asking some good questions like that regularly. A lot of couples do stuff like this over a date night. We use baseball practice.
Yeah. Nice. Basketball right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that really does feel just like such an easy date. Thank you to all the rec league coaches that are there with the kids. Yeah. And so we have sometimes an hour or an hour and a half to sit and talk and really process some things. So those can be great for us. And then we typically process things also after home group or if I go to accountability with girls or Adam goes somewhere with men. And we typically come back and process our part of that. So if I go to accountability with women, then when I come back, he's going to say, what did you share about? What was on your heart? What did you ask the girls to pray for? And we think that would be sad if I had this outlet source and there are these other people that knew what was really grieving me or causing me stress or sadness, and Adam was last to know about it. We think that'd be real sad.
That would be sad. Yeah, I think the longer we've been married, Chelsea, the safer I have felt in saying, here's where I could use your help and hold me accountable. And the safer I felt, not that I ever didn't feel safe, but the safer I felt to say, hey, this is what I talked about with this group of men, or I feel safe to ask you a question. Hey, would you share in that group of women? And part of that's because it's become very normal for us after 15 years. I don't remember what it was like the first time we started asking each other's questions, but because you and I don't keep secrets from one another, any meeting without us there is it's within bounds to say, how did that go? What did you say? We don't have well, I can't tell you, or that's not that we're sharing what other people shared, but what we shared and what we wanted help with. This didn't cross my mind until just now, but even this week, I think it was maybe 2 mornings ago, Chelsea and I will have these moments of processing as I'm out the door, she's in the door. She's come back from a night shift. I'm headed out to work at the church. And I just told her, man, I did some research on what's going on with me medically and feeling really strongly that I've narrowed down what I think is kind of a core issue. I have, for the podcast listener confession and for Cassie, I have high blood pressure and there's different roots of that, different ramifications of that. I have insomnia and headaches and other issues. And I'm going, okay, how do I want to address those things? And I'm tempted to keep that to myself and say, I feel bad about that. I feel like it's something I've contributed to in the choices I've made. And so I'm sorry about it in the sense of I have sorrow in my heart. So I know there's a sense of shame attached to it that I don't want to tell Chelsea everything about the way my heart feels about having high blood pressure. And at the same time, I know she is my helper. She is here to both hold me accountable and to help me make good choices that'll change that for our family, to schedule doctor's appointments or measure my blood pressure with our home cuff or address the way I'm eating, exercising, and disciplined. And I want her help in that. And if there are things I need to repent of, instead of being too ashamed to say so, I want to say, hey, I am sorry for the choices I've made that have contributed to where I'm at right now. But I feel like the reason I'm so tired at the end of the night, it sounds like maybe my body has been working harder than it wants to because of the way I'm treating it or taking care of it. And so inviting Chelsea into that is inviting her to support me. And to Chelsea's credit, she's always willing to be a blessing to me in prayer, always willing to be a blessing of a listening ear. And I'm grateful for that. I know not every marriage is that the case, but that's maybe an example of what it's like to struggle physically. Cassie, if a couple is struggling spiritually, let's just paint a picture here, a hypothetical. If a wife is saying, hey, my husband does not seem to be following God, or is really struggling with doubts, or he's told me he doesn't want to go to church, how can a spouse be supportive, not of that decision, but supportive of what they need help in when spirituality is the struggle?
Oh, it's so hard because help here, supporting your spouse can maybe sometimes feel like judgment or you're, trying to police their spiritual life. And so, I've given this answer probably every episode this season, but I think you start with prayer. So you pray because the Spirit, if they're a believer, their life bears fruit of a believer and their desires to follow Christ, even if they're in the midst of doubt or spiritual struggle. We know they have the Spirit of God, the same Spirit that you have as the healthy spouse or, whatever. And so I think you pray that Spirit does a work and you beg God to have eyes to see and have compassion and ask for discernment about how to enter into that help and into that support. If it's offering to read scripture together or to go on prayer walks, or I think it's going to look like a variety of things depending on what the specific struggle is. I can share from our own life. Both Eric and I have had seasons of spiritual dryness or feeling far from God or confused by what God's doing in our life. And so I think for us specifically, Eric's a biblical counselor, I'm in ministry, that can feel shameful. It feels like, are we allowed to have these seasons? Because our vocations are directly tied in many ways to our spiritual life. So if it's not flourishing, or if it doesn't feel like it's flourishing, right? Sometimes we think it has to look a certain way to be flourishing. But even Jesus in the desert being tempted was part of his walk and part of his kind of calling into ministry. And so I think that even in our desert season, in asking for that help, we don't have to be ashamed. We can acknowledge that it's hard and we can invite others in. And I think that's where also we really need to lean on the disciplines that God has outlined for us in Scripture, and just trusting that we are going to be formed by God's word. It will never return void. That is his promise to us. So we keep going back to it. It is the well that doesn't run dry. And even if it doesn't feel like how it did in our 20s or during some sort of revival season or mountaintop high or camp, whatever, you keep going back to it, trusting that God is forming you through prayer, through scripture, through fasting, all of the things he's outlined. He's said it for our good. It's like eating our vegetables, right? We don't, we just wrapped up our month of Whole30, and it's like the first week is so hard, giving up sugar and giving up some of the things you give up. But at the end, you're like, wow, I feel so good. Like you slowly start to see the results of doing these disciplined things. And so I think if your spouse is struggling, as the healthier spouse, or the one maybe that isn't struggling, you pursue those disciplines, you invite them in, you pray for them, you encourage them to invite the church in or their community in, and then you prepare yourself to long suffer if it's going to be a harder season than normal. But I do think praying for breakthrough is probably the best tool in your tool belt.
Yeah. I love that you brought up Christ in the wilderness too. That's such a good example of where Christ walks in perfect strength and perfect relationship with the Father. It still says that angels ministered to him while he was in the wilderness. And while Christ walks in perfection in the Garden of Gethsemane, he invites 3 men that are close to him to say, will you please stay awake with me? Will you please pray with me? And even in the Garden of Gethsemane, it says, and he's ministered to by angels. That there's a sense of help in the strength that he needs to face what is so difficult. And it's not that he's walking in sin, but it is that he is walking in difficulty and challenge. That is what he's facing is hard. And so I love to, not that Jesus ever doubted, but the picture you're painting, Cassie, is whatever it is that we might be a ministering spirit, come alongside with what's called us to serve, to pray, to join in prayer when the other person is having a hard time, to commit to being there. And you can almost hear it in Jesus' voice when he says, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? He's asking for help. And if that could be the role we play in our marriage, that would be such an honor. Chelsea, what about emotionally? Like if a spouse is struggling, maybe now they're not saying I'm doubting, maybe not saying I'm dry, they're saying I'm sad, or I'm so angry, will you help me? Or I'm trying to think of what other emotion somebody might express and say, will you please help me? I'm feeling grief. How can a spouse be supportive?
Like Cassie said, you pray. You pray with them, you pray over them, you pray for them, and you sit with them, and you sympathize and empathize, all of those things, which means we don't minimize it or make light of it. I don't think it's, there's a lot of things that, that we have like studies on that say this is helpful, this is not helpful. I know that, we practice that in nursing care and bereavement care. It's not a helpful time to say everything happens for a reason.
Oh, right.
Right. There are things that are objectively helpful and not helpful. And then at the same time, like, your spouse. And if you really are troubled to know what to say or what they need, it can be really helpful to ask. Say, what sounds helpful right now?
That's good.
What could I do for you? Do you want me to just sit with you? I mean, there's times lately where I'll say, can you just come hug me? That's what I want. I want you to just wrap your arms around me. I don't need anything from you. I know for you, Adam, it can be hard when you can't take away the problem. Even though I'm not asking you to, just asking you to kind of share sadness or, I think trying not to talk people out of their feelings can be helpful. Trying to convince somebody that they don't feel what they're feeling, or that it's not like that minimization. That's like, well, it's not really that bad, or what that person did to you wasn't. Like, if you think about it rightly, they're not that wrong, or, stuff like that.
Which
I think
so
it's unhelpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've been like guilty of everything I'm saying, but so this is not, I think actually Adam made me ask this so that I would just begin to confess.
He's trying to pick a little.
Yeah.
This is my passive aggressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Adam feels down about something, I want to convince him that there's more joy to be had.
Oh, I'm the same
I want
way.
to pull him out of the pit and say, "Come up here," or whatever.
Like, perspective is everything. Your just perspective is off, Like,
yeah.
Not helpful.
It's like telling a kid that you'll understand when you're older is not a solution to the way they feel right now. And it's an invalidation of the way they feel to say you'll feel differently later when you truly understand. I do feel that temptation Chelsea's talking about to have the right words to say that'll solve it. But Zach Eswine has a book called Spurgeon's Sorrows. And in it, he talks about how sadness is evidence that your heart is working in a sad situation, not that it's broken. That in the sense of like that it's not working right. Because when we hit a sad situation, the right response is sadness.
Yeah.
So to try to say what you need is a cure for sadness, maybe saying it's implying that something is wrong with you, when really what you may need is comfort in sadness, not a remedy. What you need is to be reminded you are okay. And in anger, and there may be opportunities too in anger or sadness where the truth is like there may be a perspective change that if we could grant it, there may be something delusional going on. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I think for the most part, if we could take the pressure off ourselves to say, I need to be the remedy to what my spouse is struggling with. No, what I can do is join them in it, right? Almost like the picture of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We don't see the fourth one in the fire, push them out of the fire. We see them join them in the fire. And there's something in that picture that says, in what would be suffering, I'll be in it with you, and therefore it won't be suffering alone. And there's something really biblical about that picture of bearing one another's burdens, not saying, hey, I'll take the whole burden so you have none, and not saying, hey, your burden is stupid or your burden is wrong or shouldn't be burdened. What's the matter with you? But saying, how do I come alongside you and grieve with those who grieve, rejoice with those who rejoice? That's a biblical idea.
Yeah.
Chelsea, I talked a little bit about physical struggles a second ago. I know that we know marriages where there's a physical struggle for a child. There's a physical struggle for a spouse. We've seen aging marriages. The older we get, the more we see people that, one spouse has cancer, one spouse has a terrible diagnosis, or we've even seen, spouses who get married knowing there's chronic illness, and this will mean I have a lifetime of being a caregiver or a caretaker, which, by the way, mean the same thing. I don't understand that. Taking, giving. You're both caring for that person. You're a caregiver or a caretaker. How do you support a spouse? Or how do you think, I know Chelsea and I joke about this, that like women in her family live forever and I will not be living forever. So she will at some point have to, take care of me physically and maybe even say goodbye to me, which hopefully that's not the case. If that's the case, if I have a long season of struggling and you need to help me through a surgery, through chemo, through whatever, what would you say to the marriage that's going, I want to be a supportive spouse, but this chronic pain is so hard? How can spouses support each other through like physical struggle?
I mean, that's a complicated question because there's a lot of facets of that, right? We can assume that the spouse who needs a lot of care and help might have a lot of shame, even if it's completely unrelated to any contribution they've made to the illness. But it can make us feel really vulnerable, and we could feel kind of embarrassed, or just that weakness of feeling like someone's contributing a lot to my life in a way that I cannot give back.
Yeah.
And to be sensitive to that. But all of that is really hard. It's hard to suffer for a long time, and it's hard to kind of pour yourself out in a way that can't be reciprocated. Those are hard things that really require dependence on the Lord to do that well. And we've seen a lot of people do that well. And so I know that the Spirit intervenes and provides. I think we've all seen somebody where you watch them go through something and you say, how are they able to do it?
Yeah.
I don't think I could do it. And you go, because the Lord's not supplying me that need today because it's not me.
Yeah.
But I'm watching the Lord supply that need. We've seen friends who take care of children with complex needs. It does not look easy. And yet at the same time, we see the Lord hold them up.
Yeah.
So for spouses in this situation, I want to encourage you that the Lord will give the grace sufficient for that day. But it is a lot of work to care for someone until their dying day. And to bear their needs. And a lot of times that means, sacrificing. And that's not easy. But we look to the Lord and say, hold me up today. Give me what I need today.
Yeah, for sickness and health, right? I think of, one of our old friends we haven't seen in a long time. He's remarried now, but his wife had a terrible cancer that took her life. And you talked so often about how sensitive that was to him as other people would see it, but how much his current wife saw the way he took care of his first wife. And it meant so much to her to see the way that he was dedicated to her and carried her, literally sometimes carried her from the car to the wheelchair, pushed her in and out of stores and took care of her. And we go, but that is what marriage is supposed to look like. And at the same time, I get why that's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really hard to be a caregiver as much as it's hard to be the person who's hurting.
Mm.
And part of the reason it's so hard is you don't want to go to your spouse who needs care in order to support your caregiving. So I do think there's a blessing of community, the blessing of counselors, a blessing of pastors, a blessing of knowing other people and depending on other people, that if you're a caregiver, whether that's because your spouse is struggling socially, physically, spiritually, you have to remember like that can be hard. It can be hard to be supportive, especially if it's chronic and it's all the time.
Mm.
And it's okay to get support as a supporter. It's okay to get care as a caregiver. If we could talk all day about this, I know there's a lot of other areas where our spouses can struggle. They can struggle socially. They can struggle. We've already talked about spiritually and emotionally and physically, but there's a lot of ways they can struggle as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, as a worker. They can struggle with, chronic joblessness or despair, or even some things that might be clinical, whether it's depression or anxiety. And so how do we support them? I love the themes you guys are pointing to is we're prayerful, we go to the Lord, and we go to others around us. But Cassie, I'd love to end maybe with a really important question of how we might advise someone to approach their spouse if they're feeling like my spouse is not very supportive and I need help. And I know we've talked about in our marriages, I think we're talking from a place of health. We're talking from a place of safety. But if somebody said, hey, my spouse is not supportive and not helpful, how would you encourage them to approach their spouse?
Oh, I mean, I have some friends who are in really difficult circumstances or marriages, really. It's really challenging, and they've have felt this way. And I think as a friend who's prayed with them and who's walked with them, I think the most, helpful advice has been to, like you were saying, don't set traps, like don't set unreasonable expectations, unspoken expectations. So it would be really clear about what would be helpful. Because I think what the hardest situation would be is if you've communicated that you need help and the spouse is just unwilling to help. And that's really hard. And that's where I think you invite your community and your church in and you say, okay, well, if my spouse isn't willing to help me, then I'm going to have to rely on the family of God to come in and to support me. And then hopefully in that family of God, there will be people that will walk with the spouse and help point them to what a godly marriage and what a godly spouse, what kind of support they offer. But I do think a lot of the struggle within the marriage when your spouse is feeling unsupported can maybe dissolve when there's some really clear and not loaded conversation, not like that's loaded with conflict, but it's really clear, it's humble, it's coming from a place of weakness, but not anger and bitterness. It says, I really need help here. And it's not that I'm angry, it's that I am weak. And God has given us each other to help. And I would love to help you if there's something that you need help with that I'm not seeing. And so that it's kind of both. It's acknowledging that maybe because sometimes, I mean, as a wife, I'm offering help that Eric doesn't even need. He's like, he doesn't care if the meal is homemade and healthy. And so I'm like, but I've labored over this pot of soup or whatever. And it's like, that's the help I've offered him today. And it's not that he's ungrateful, but it's like the help he really needed was something else, And so I think sometimes we're offering the wrong kind of help or support. And so I think that's where the really clear and humble and compassionate communication can be the most helpful, and assuming the best about your spouse. And so I think that goes a long way where there's really good intentions towards one another. I think where there's not good intentions or there's sin or maliciousness, I think is when you need to invite the church in to be the help that you need, and then also to maybe surround your marriage and really kind of speak life into the spouse that's walking in sin.
That's good. Chelsea, any thoughts on that? Someone approaches you and they say, hey, my spouse, you guys are talking about struggles. I'm struggling, and they do not seem to be offering me care. What would you say?
I would echo everything Cassie just said, really. But that humility goes a long way. Like what Cassie mentioned about just acknowledging, like, if I feel this way, maybe my spouse also has unmet needs, right? Like maybe we're missing each other on this. And so to go humbly, without accusation, without contempt, if we really feel those things in our hearts, I think we need to go first to the Lord and maybe to a trusted friend to kind of work through that. so that I can present something honest to my spouse rather than something that's full of negativity and accusation. We know that a lot of marriages really have this kind of unhealthy back and forth that is just loaded with like, here's all the ways you failed me.
Right.
And it's not helpful.
Keeping track of record of wrongs. Right?
Yeah.
Love does not do that.
Right. And those things are really unhelpful. They make somebody feel picked apart. They make somebody feel inadequate. And so I don't know that there's a perfect way to do this, but I know in our marriage, it would be helpful to say, it would mean the world to me if right now you just listened for a little bit. I just want to share about how much this event brought me grief in my life. And I just need somebody to listen. Can you listen? But again, like I talked about, like there's this fear of disappointment we have that like once we put a need out there, just because we said it doesn't mean they have to. And it's not about trusting your spouse. It's about trusting the Lord to say, well, you hold me up if it hurts really bad, that I put a need out there and I asked for something specific and this person just wasn't able to meet that need, whether their heart wasn't soft or maybe just in the moment too selfish to really see the hurt of someone else or the need of someone else or whatever. And that can feel crushing. But I can say in my own marriage, like I've seen nothing but growth in this. I think before I got married, I couldn't handle admitting that I was sad. I couldn't handle admitting that I was angry. I was always just like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. No, I'm good. Because it just felt too scary. And it felt like if I put that out there, what if nobody cares? And that will hurt too much. But I've really learned not how to do this perfectly, but how to do it better and really trust the Lord to go, yeah, I'm going to actually create an opportunity where someone can either love me or hurt me, right? And that has to be like, both of those have to be present for it to be a possibility for this person to actually come in and help you. Then it always is possible that they hurt you too, that they don't meet the need or disappoint you in some way, and to say, I'm going to just trust God that he is going to be sufficient in the moment of my disappointment or my hurt. But if I build up a wall to say, like, no one can be trusted with my grief, no one can be trusted with my sadness, my anxiety, my stress, no one can be trusted with it, then all of a sudden you have a wall around you where no one can love you. And that's just, it's not going to lead to health. No. So I think going to our spouse with just a really like tender and open heart, not with the accusation to say like, hey, here's all the ways you failed me, but to say like, today would mean a lot if you looked at me while we talked instead of at your phone. When you have your phone up, it just feels like maybe you don't care. And I don't know if that's true, but it would just mean so much to me if you set it down for a second and give them the opportunity to try. And
then for that spouse to not be defensive in that moment.
Yeah.
And say, I received that.
Yeah.
And whether that's true or not, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I want to reciprocate. So yeah, it would actually mean a lot to me if it meant a lot to you. So I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, thanks for listening, friends. If you think it's as important as we do to disciple our families, please help us out by giving us a great review wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit one of our sponsors and share this episode with one of your friends. If you want to keep up with us or join the conversation, you can find us at familydiscipleship.com or follow the Family Discipleship Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We love you, listeners, and we'll be back with another new episode about marriage next week.